Hey everybody, You Are Not a Rock is out now in the US, Canada, and in Korea as well. It's been out in a bunch of other countries under a variety of titles. This feels like the culmination of a very long journey, so I asked people on Instagram if they had any questions about the making of the book. First, for those of you who maybe don't know me or don't know about this book, some background. In the past, I struggled with a bunch of mental illnesses, ignored them for years, finally got help, had to make a ton of big changes in my life, got over them. So that's the short version. And that really showed me that taking care of mental health is just like taking care of physical fitness. Right? We have to be pushing into difficult, sweaty challenges. But if you're not doing cardiovascular exercise, it's not weird if you suck at running. It doesn't mean you have an endurance disorder. That's a totally natural result of not doing that thing. Right? The same goes for something like anxiety. If you're not consistently pushing into anxiety and working on experiencing anxiety in your life, it's totally natural that you would struggle with it. That's just how the body works. So we need to build up the skills to handle whatever our brains can throw at us, and that is something that everybody can do in their daily lives. So You Are Not a Rock is all about the skills you can practice to proactively improve and maintain your mental health and have thoughts and emotions, because that is the thing you do because you are human. This is a field guide to experiencing thoughts and emotions while you do the things you care about in life. So that's enough background. Let's get into the questions. What was the transformation point for you in deciding to take care of your mental health? It was realizing that who I was acting as was not me. That very much in a minute-to-minute, every day, I was just constantly reacting to all of this stuff. My brain would throw up, and it was taking me further and further away from where I wanted to be in life. So I was way over here doing all sorts of things I didn't want to be doing, and really I wanted to be way over there. And in particular, I wanted to be writing a novel. I'd taken a couple of months where I decided I was going to write a novel. I'd always wanted to write a novel, and probably about after 6 months, I hadn't written anything. I was spending all of my time and energy on these compulsions, which I thought were necessary, which I later learned was just lots of mental illness practice time. I was just making everything worse. I finally realized something was wrong. I didn't understand what, but I knew there was just this massive gap between where I wanted to be and where I was. And so what's kind of neat about having the book come out is that really, this book was only possible to write because I learned and practiced the skills in the book. Like it essentially, this practice of mental health that's in here made the book possible. It was not possible to write when I struggled with my mental health, and so it is awesome that my first book is about mental health. Next question is kind of a practical one. If you're buying the book, what is the difference between the paperback version and the digital version? There's nothing all that different. I'd say whichever is most accessible to you, get that one. There's also an audiobook version. But I will say that, of course, if we keep electing politicians based on fear instead of skill, we'll soon live in a world where only the paperback version functions. I'm going to stick together two questions here. How long ago did you start writing it? And how long did it take you to put together the book? So I started writing it in March of 2015. But, and this is a huge but, that original book that I started writing, that is not this book. It completely changed. After I started writing out that initial idea, I realized it wasn't going to work. Then I kind of switched over to what became this book. But even then, it changed significantly. So that summer, I started working with my agent, Hattie. She's extremely knowledgeable about mental health and about books. So once I started working with her, she really helped me craft a proposal to take to publishers. And then once we go to the publisher, then again, it changes significantly. Like once I actually had the book deal, I basically rewrote the entire thing. And to get to there, so I started writing in March of 2015. It was actually March of 2017. I remember I was going to facilitate a workshop in Indonesia. I got the final edits back from the publisher just as I was getting on the plane. Then I had a couple days to acclimatize and get adjusted to the time zone change when before the workshop started. I went through everything then and sent it back to the publisher. And then it came out that summer. of 2017 as the Mind Workout in the UK, and now a year later, right, You Are Not a Rock is coming out, right? So this is 2018, from 2015 to 2018, so 3 years. So if you're thinking about writing a book, get started now, so that hopefully it comes out before you're dead. We got another question here about the writing process. So what were the setbacks you experienced? And I honestly had to stop when I saw this question and think about what would somebody see as a setback in this process. And because the thing was, like I said, I realized that my mental health was in terrible shape when I couldn't write. And so now being able to write was really just enjoyable. I didn't see anything in that process as a setback. Of course, there were rejections from publishers or things that didn't work, but that was all part of it. Like, I was doing the thing I wanted to be doing. I think in general that's a useful approach to take to things. If you're doing what you want to be doing, then everything else is just part of the environment, part of the context that you get to navigate while you're doing the thing that you love doing. It's really like a video game. If you're playing the game, be happy that you're playing the game. It doesn't really matter if you're playing some level and you get eaten by a dragon and you get sent back to the start of the level, because you're playing the game you want to be playing. It makes you better the next time a dragon tries to eat you. So it's not really useful to be judging those things as setbacks or problems, because you're doing the thing you want to be doing. The next one is about getting started. So the question is, where do you begin? And I start with who the reader is and what they need, what they're looking for, and what I can give, and then look for that overlap. And then I create something called a razor. And so a razor is a short sentence that tells you what the thing you're making is about, and it helps you cut stuff and maintain focus throughout the production process. So the razor for this book is You Are Not a Rock is a tool that helps you make and sustain changes to improve your mental health. And then the razor helps me cut stuff when I'm writing, because maybe there's an interesting story or something that's fascinating about brains, but it's not directly relevant to being a tool that somebody can use to improve and sustain their mental health. So then it gets cut by the razor. For example, there was a large chunk of a section all on research disproving the chemical imbalance myth and linking it back to very old medieval ideas, like the ideas of the four humors and how we had these things in us we had to balance, and then connecting it to the misogyny, the sexism of early psychiatry and diagnoses like hysteria. But I mean, it's interesting stuff. It's neat to see that arc and how we're still affected by all these ridiculous ideas from the medieval era. But the purpose of the book is not to debunk silly old myths. Next up, a book structure question here. How do you ensure there's good flow? And this is something I look at a lot when I'm making the book, and what I do is I zoom way out in the word processor so that the pages start to look like images, so that the text just becomes these lines, and then I can really look at whether each section is kind of balanced, or if one section does need to be longer, like maybe there's a very short section that comes after it, so that there's kind of this pace and this flow and rhythm to how the sections are laid out and where the images are, maybe where there's a chart and then where there's an exercise and how long everything is. But until you really get it, the physical copy, it's still very difficult to do that. So one of the changes from the UK version, the Mind Workout, to the US version, You Are Not a Rock, is that the images are actually more balanced out, I would say now, because I noticed that a lot of the images and the quotes in the beginning were much larger than the ones in the end. And the drawing of the unicorn is significantly enhanced. Now, this question is perhaps the million-dollar question. Is a self-help book used to change old actions and behaviors enough to recover without the help of a therapist? So there have been numerous randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses looking at comparing self-help books to therapy, to placebo, etc. This is what's often referred to as bibliotherapy, and we know it's just as effective. Okay, but And there's this enormous caveat here we have to emphasize. It does not matter if you go to a therapist or you use a book. You still have to make the changes. No therapist can make the changes that are required to maintain and improve mental health. No book can make those changes for you. Asking if a book is as effective for improving mental health as going to a therapist is very much like asking if a book is as effective for improving physical fitness as going to a personal fitness trainer. You still have to do the sweaty work. You have to go in there and make the changes. You have to consistently show up and do those challenging things and really push into what you're finding difficult and learn the new skills and implement them in your life and bring supports into your life to help with all of these changes that you're making and to sustain those changes and be consistent. If you want to get into shape physically or mentally, you are going to sweat a lot. There is no easy way around it. What I was really trying to do in You Are Not a Rock is give people exercises to help them sustain those changes, to be consistent with them. We know in physical fitness too, that is one of the biggest challenges. It's quite simple to explain how to get into great physical shape. It's much more complicated to do it and sustain that. The same is true in mental health. It's really very easy to explain how to recover from a mental illness or how to build better mental health. The challenge is in actually implementing those changes in our lives. And so that's why I make jokes. That's why I have the drawings and the exercises. All of this is about trying to make that more accessible. And that's why, I also made this video channel. That's why, it's all about building this community so that we support each other. I mean, in physical fitness for a long time, there's been great communities around sharing tips and helping people understand how to do exercises. We haven't had that so much in mental health. We need to start to approach mental health in the same way. People struggle to recover from mental illness, not because we don't know how to do it, but because we don't talk about it. We're not making it easy and accessible for people, and that needs to change. This next question makes sense if you want to know what is actually in the book. The question is, can you share the list of contents? The thing is, it'd be really long for me to go through each chapter, so what I'll do is I'll put the table of contents down below in the description on YouTube, and you can check it out down there, and I'll put a little sentence beside each chapter so you know what it's about. But what I will say, this is important, in the past, I feel before I had to write an introduction for a book, I never read introductions. I just want to get into the stuff, particularly in a book that's a tool. I don't, and maybe this isn't a great approach, I don't want to read the instructions, I want to use it. So I just always skipped introductions my entire life. I've never read an introduction before. However, then I was told I had to write one. So what I did was I made the introduction useful. So read the introduction. There is actually an exercise in the introduction. It's that extremely important exercise about learning how to experience the urge to check your phone and not check it. So check it out, especially if you're like me and normally you would skip the introduction. You don't have to skip this one. The next question is a really great one when you're thinking about mental health on any kind of project. How do you decide when it's time to stop editing and reviewing the book? So first, it's a lot like steak. You just kind of press it and you can tell by how it feels. That's only partially true. This is an awesome thing to think about because if you're making something and you have a brain, it's going to come up with all of these uncertainties. It's going to want to check things. It's going to want to keep fixing things. It's going to doubt that it's right or that it's good or that you've arrived at whatever the thing it is you're trying to arrive at. So having recognized that, it's really useful to have structures in place that help you stick to your values and move forward. So the razor that I talked about earlier is one of those. Right? The razor is actually borrowed from the video game world. If you've ever experienced a situation where a video game was supposed to come out and you were really hyped for it and then 10 years later the video game still hasn't appeared, or it does appear and it's full of all sorts of stuff that you don't like, that's because they didn't have a good razor and they didn't stick to it. So the razor is a great thing to have to say, okay, have I achieved what I wanted to in the razor? Am I spending my time on something that's not relevant to the razor? Then it needs to be cut. Another exercise that I like to use, and I talk about in the book, is actually setting arbitrary deadlines to produce something that I will share. So I might do something like the example I use in the book is like give yourself a bus ride to write a blog post and then upload it at the end of the bus ride, right? So you have to create something that you can achieve within a bus ride and be mindful and present creating that thing because you have no option to redo it. You're going to share it as soon as the bus ride's over. And so like these are like mindfulness and productivity exercises. So what I would do with the book is set out something like, I only have this morning to rewrite 2 chapters. And so I could land on a paragraph that I really don't like, and I might start to rewrite it and finesse it. And then who knows, that maybe that takes me the entire morning because I'm really stuck about how to get that paragraph so I feel right about it. But then the morning's gone. I don't get to rewrite any of the other parts of the chapter. And so I've kind of blown that. Tough luck. I'll have to do better on the next book. So setting those arbitrary deadlines helped me say, okay, given that I only have this morning, what are my priorities? How do I want to spend my time and energy to create something that has to be shared, at this time, by the end of this morning? And then I do it. And so I really create that framework within which I'll create and use that to guide how I spend my time and energy and then move on. This next question, I might have accidentally prompted people to do it because I said to ask questions about why books are awesome. And so the question is, why are books awesome? Books are awesome because you can carry them around with you. You can hand them to other people. This is still such a phenomenal way. Even with all the digital tools we have, this is such a great way to share ideas and pass them around the world. You can sit there on the bus and easily pull out your book and you can read it. It actually, reading this on the bus is one of the things I was thinking about when we were creating this. I think there's this huge problem in mental health books where they make them look sick. Like so many mental health books, the covers look like the physical manifestation of hospital disinfectant smell. There are all these teal greens and aqua blues and maroons. The cover graphics look like they were done with a 1998 copy of Microsoft PowerPoint. This speaks to this much larger, broader problem we have in the mental health sector where we make it look sick and uncool to take care of your mental health. But taking care of your mental health should look interesting and fun and creative. It should look like taking care of your physical fitness. We shouldn't be making books that are like stigmatizing to hold. Like if you see somebody reading that book on the bus, you're thinking, whoa, that person must have issues. This is meant to be a book that's of a size and a style that you can be excited to read in public, to have on your desk, that people are going to want to ask you what it's about. Of course, the title, You're Not a Rock, also kind of playing on how often meditation books and books on meditation and mindfulness often have rocks on the cover. And I don't understand that because the purpose of meditation is actually to have feelings, right? To be very human. It's not to be a rock. I am not a geologist. I don't know why they make meditation books look like geology textbooks. We got 2 more questions here. This one is about me. It's kind of about the book too. Are you becoming a full-time therapist? The answer to that is no. I already work full-time with people and organizations around the world, helping them change and do innovative things, and I love that. There's a broader kind of set of reasons why I wouldn't become a therapist. I see our approach to mental health care as a massive contributor to our current mental illness crisis. When you create a system that requires everybody to take care of their health by working one-on-one with somebody, you inevitably create a system where it doesn't scale, right? Where you're incentivizing crisis because there's going to be so many people with problems. The only way for them to get help is to get really, really, really sick. And so we've developed this system and structured in such a way that it has to be extremely reactive and it's entirely dependent on crisis. And so, you've probably seen, if you try to get help, quite often you have to get sick enough to get help. Think about how accessible exercise and physical fitness would be if we required you to only work on your physical fitness one-on-one with a doctor. And that's really the approach we've taken with mental health, where we see, everybody has great mental health, and then there are some people over here who have mental illness. And so that's really not an effective public health approach. So it's really, I see it as my job to change that, is to create tools and resources that make mental health accessible to the largest number of people possible. I want a low-cost consumer market for mental health like we have for physical fitness. I want diagnoses that are driven by data. I want to work on building better mental health, not just focus on managing mental illness symptoms because we created a system that's so unscalable, that's all we can do. Here now is the last question. Dude, should I celebrate any steps forward that I make or just be chill? My question isn't book related. I've just never had a question for you till now. This is actually book related, and it's something I talk about in the book, that it's useful to celebrate steps. Any steps. It's useful to even celebrate not taking any steps. We don't have to get into a situation where we're only kind to ourselves because we've earned some imaginary gold star. That sets up this logical framework whereby if we don't earn this imaginary gold star, then we can't be kind to ourselves, and that's just not useful. It's so important to be kind to yourself and celebrate yourself, period. End of story. Like, celebrate yourself for existing. You might have heard me before in meditation practices talking about being unreasonably grateful. Gratitude is this awesome gift to give to others, to give to ourselves, and we don't need reasons to give it. So keep success close. Keep success close to you in being. Right? Be yourself. Be grateful for that. Celebrate that. Success isn't about measuring steps and did I do this thing or did I do it right and did other people say good things about me. It's really about making success close, making success something that's very close to you, that you can experience through the practice of being yourself. And then taking those awesome steps that you want to take becomes a product of that rather than something by which you measure success. And so whatever you're doing today, in any minute, celebrate it. Okay? Practice being you. That brings us to the end. Thank you to everybody who sent in questions. Thank you to everybody who has been part of this journey, creating this book, sharing your stories, sharing your own adventures of taking care of your mental health over the past couple of years. And I look forward to many more years of sharing that with you. If you get a chance to read it, please review it wherever you bought it. I'd love to hear what you think. And of course, if you have any questions about the book or whatever else is popping into your head, throw them down in the comments below.